It's a great pleasure to have Rav Aryeh Lebowitz in the Restitution.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rabbi Lebowitz. It's great to be back here in Lev HaTorah. It's been a while since I've been here pre-Corona. It was the last time I was here. It's so wonderful to see all the Talmidim learning so beautifully over here, and to see the yeshiva got bigger since I'm here, not only in terms of the number of Talmidim, the actual physical structure got bigger. It's really amazing to see. You should keep on learning from your amazing Rebbeim and growing in Torah, your Shemayim, and all of the good things. So what we're going to do today, I figured, is I'll share with you a few interesting questions that I got over the past, long time, and you'll let me know which one you want to talk about. My cousin said, my cousin is from the town, in case you didn't get the Lebowitz connection. So my cousin said 1 o'clock is lunch, and you better not go to 101, right? So we have. He's way bigger than me and way stronger than me. I will not start up. One of my rules in life is you don't start up with Rav Tano. It should be your rule too. So we'll definitely finish in plenty of time, believe there. And you'll just tell me. I'm going to point out 3 questions. I'm going to share with you 3 questions that I've been asked. Still deciding which 3 to use, and you'll tell me which one you want to discuss, which one you want to talk about. Sounds good? Good? Yeah? Great. Yeah? Great. Okay, good. So let's get right to it. A Talmud of mine in Yeshiva University. Yeshiva University is located in a wonderful neighborhood called Washington Heights. Now, if you're familiar with Washington Heights, they say that there are two sides of Washington Heights. There's what they call the YU side of Washington Heights and the Breuer side of Washington Heights, right? Familiar? There's actually a third side of Washington Heights, which I think makes up the majority of Washington Heights. That's the part of Washington Heights you don't want to go to, right? So you want to be either on the YU side, preferably for us, or the Breuer side. If you're in the other side of Washington Heights, it's like at your own risk. Good. So there's a shul on the other side, on the third side of Washington Heights, and there's like very few people left in that shul. There are maybe like 5 or 6 people that are still left in that shul to help make a minyan. The rest of them all died, I assume, from stab wounds, but I don't know. But there's only like 5 or 6 people left in that shul. So some guys from YU, the big Balei Chesed that they are, will go and help make a minyan there. They'll have like 5 or 6 guys from YU who will go help make a minyan in the shul. So guys were there. One particular Talmud of mine is a very colorful character. Rav Shlit'a uses that term a lot, colorful character. Usually it means someone who's absolutely insane. So this guy was a very colorful character, and he was there helping to make a minyan. And there were exactly 10 people in the minyan, and the chazan at some point used the term. He said, as he was davening, Mashiach tzidkecha. And the guy in front of this Talmud of mine, we'll call this Talmud Gabe, because his name is Gabe. So the guy in front of him turns around and he says, Mashiach tzidkecha, that's me. And my Talmud's like, what? He says, yeah, I'm Mashiach. So he's like, okay, and they just continued davening. So afterwards, Gabe went over to someone in the shul. He said, what's the story with the guy that was sitting in front of me during davening? And they said, oh, the guy sitting in front of you during davening, you mean Mashiach? And he's like, you know about this? The guy said, yeah, he thinks he's Mashiach. So Gabe said, who takes care of him? Does someone feed him and dress him and who takes care of someone like that? He said, no, he's an accountant. He's a regular guy. He works a regular job. He just also happens to think he's Mashiach. But other than that, he's totally normal. There's nothing else about him that's unusual. So Gabe came back to YU and he said, what if there are exactly 10 people in the minyan, including Mashiach? Right? So does he count toward a minyan? Or do you have to call in some reinforcements to get an 11th person? So that is Shaila number 1. Just to understand the Shaila, why not? Why can't Mashiach count toward a minyan? First of all, maybe he's right. No, we're not going to go there. But why can't he? Hopefully, when the real Mashiach comes, we won't say the same thing, But why can't he count toward a minyan? What would be the problem? And maybe he's a shota. Yeah.
He's mentally ill, but he's high functioning.
He's a very high-functioning mentally ill person. Right? Okay, so that's Shaila number one. There's another reason maybe why not to count him toward a minion. He may be not Bikoras. Why is he not Bikoras? Rambam has 13 principles of faith. One of them is not only you have to believe in Mashiach, you have to hope and wait for Mashiach. This guy's not waiting anymore. He's here, right? I'm here already. So nothing to wait for, nothing to hope for. Does that make him an Apikoras? I don't know. Okay, so that's Shaila number one. Shaila number two. Rabbi Froh, is it safe to do the Shoshana one, or should? What do you think?
Full set.
No? You say no? Don't do it. Okay. So Shaila number two. I got an email from a guy as follows. One of my old DRS Talmidim from like way long ago. And he writes to me as follows. He says, when I was in high school, a few different times, 2 or 3, I went into the Pickwick convenience store near DRS. Anyone from the 5 towns over here? So you're familiar with the old Pickwick convenience store near DRS on Peninsula Boulevard? There used to be a convenience store for if you went to DRS High School, where I was Zocha to teach for 18 years, and you needed like a snack during the day. That's the only place to go. Like Central Avenue was too far away unless you had a car, and you officially weren't allowed to have a car. So that was the only place to really go. So there was this old convenience store. So this guy writes, I used to go to the Pickwick convenience store near DRS, and a few times I took drinks without paying, which means he stole. Over the years, I tried to take care of this. I recall one time going into the store and giving the cashier a few extra dollars above the item that I was purchasing, meaning he was trying to pay them back, but he didn't know how to do it. He didn't know how to say, like, I stole. He didn't know exactly what he stole, so he just gave him an extra couple of bucks. Cashier never corrected him. I still wasn't sure how much I owed them and if I paid the store back. So on a different occasion, after the store was already closed, now it's closed down, it's all boarded up, he said, after it was ready to close, I slipped a $20 bill under the door, hoping that would cover the whatever it is that he stole. That should have covered what I owed them. Problem is, since the money wasn't actually handed to anyone, I don't know that actually counts as paying it back. So what exactly is my obligation at this point? And then he writes, should you use this question in a shir? I'm kind of embarrassed by this, so please don't mention my name. All right, so his name rhymes with. No, I'm just. So he says. So he stole stuff from them in high school. Sometimes people do things in their youth that they're embarrassed about later on, and that's why God created something called tshuva. Right? We're supposed to do tshuva, and here's someone very sincerely trying to do tshuva, but in order to do tshuva, he has to reimburse the people that he stole from. This was a ben adam l'chavero, so he wants to know how to do tshuva for this. That is shaila number 2. Shaila number 3 relates a little bit to Chanukah and a lot to tefillah and a little bit to the parshios that we've been reading lately. Here it is. This is an old shaila I got many years ago, probably about 10 years ago. So I have my Talmud from one of my Talmidim from my very first year teaching. Guy's not much younger than I am, probably 5 years younger than me. And I'm old. You see the gray, right? My wife sees it every day. So I a guy probably 5 years younger than me, and he got married, and he and his wife had a healthy child, thank God. And then his wife was pregnant with a second child. Great, that's fantastic. They went to the doctor, and the doctor said, I know that you got tested before you got married for certain genetic diseases, which you should all do before you get married. You're supposed to get tested because, especially if you're an Ashkenazi Jew, but really no matter who you are, but especially if you're an Ashkenazi Jew, Ashkenazi Jews have all sorts of lovely genetic diseases that came from generations of people marrying their first cousins, and no diversification of the gene pool. So if you're Ashkenazi, marry a Sephardi. If you're a Sephardi, marry an Ashkenazi. It will be good for the gene pool. It will be difficult in other levels, but whatever, you'll figure that stuff out. So they got tested beforehand for whatever. There's an organization called Dar Yesharim. This organization pretty much rid the Ashkenazi Jewish world of the most horrible, dreadful disease that they used to have called, anyone know? Tay-Sachs, right? It was a dreadful, dreadful disease. Children would die at the age of 2 or 3, and their lives were miserable. The guy who started Dor Yishon was there in Maimonides Medical Center when they closed down the Tay-Sachs ward because there was no business anymore. Meaning, like a real contribution to Jewish society in encouraging people to get tested. But Dor Yishon only tests for like 6 or 7 diseases. Maybe now it's up to 10 or 12. We have a whole bunch of diseases that we could be tested for. So the doctor said you should get tested. Do the whole. Now there's an organization called J-Screen that tests for like 150 different diseases. So the doctor said, look, your wife is pregnant. We want to know what we might be dealing with. So get tested for everything. We still don't know how this happened exactly. We're not sure what was missed on the first time or how it was missed on the first time. They both got tested. She's pregnant, and they're both carriers of Tay-Sachs. Unclear how it happened. We don't know. It's like never happened. Dor Yishon never missed. Meaning there's never been a Tay-Sachs baby after both parties were tested by Dor Yishon. Unclear how that happened. But now they find out she's carrying a fetus, and they both are carriers of Tay-Sachs. Now, what are the chances? See who paid attention in high school bio. What are the chances that baby that's in the womb right now has Tay-Sachs? What? Not 50. I think it's 1 in 4. I think it's 25%. Right? You have the box with the thing, the big letter, the little letter. Right? So the two. Yeah. Right. So you have. Right. So you have. So it's 1 in 4. I'm pretty sure it's 25%. Whatever it is, it's too much. It's too high a percentage. So what's their shaila? So far, it's just, oh God, right? Horrible. What's their shaila? So the first question you think of is abortion, which is a real shaila, and it comes up, and it's something you should never know from such shailas, but these shailas do come up. That was not their shaila, though. That was not their shaila. First thing they do is they test the fetus. And they test to see if the fetus actually has Tay-Sachs. They do a test called amniocentesis, which itself has some risk associated with it, but in this case you got to do it. So they do the test, and they did the test on a Wednesday. Now, we live in the year 2022, almost 2023, Tafshin Pei Gimel, not Tafshin Pei Beis, like I wrote on Meksuba recently and had to change last minute. It's Tafshin Pei Gimel, and when we live in Tafshin Pei Gimel, we expect things to happen like instantly. Like you do a test, boom, it's right away. You should get the results. I don't know. You take a standardized test. I don't know, how do the SATs work nowadays? Do you have to wait for results? Yeah. You do still, but no one takes the SATs anymore. I thought, right? No, you don't have to take tests anymore. COVID, it's because of COVID, right? So you don't have to do anything. But I would imagine you'd expect like instant results. They took this test. This was 10 years ago. They took this test on a Wednesday. Results were going to come in the following Monday. 5 days. 5 days of Ne'ilah of Yom Kippur. 5 days of not knowing what's going on with this baby. Now tell me, what is their shaila?
Are you allowed to daven?
Are you allowed to daven? Excellent. Are you allowed to daven that the baby doesn't have Tay-Sachs? Now, on the one hand, how do you not daven? Right? Meaning, if there's ever a time you needed the Ribbon Shalom in your life, and you got to daven. But on the other hand, what's the side not to daven? No, even if we always daven, even if it may alter Hashem's plan up until that point. That's you're not allowed to daven for something that's already happened, and the baby, whether it is Tay-Sachs or not, that's already been determined at conception, right? It depends. That's the 1 in 4 chance. It either happened or it didn't happen. You're davening for something that's already taken place. So are you allowed to daven for such a thing? That is shaila number 3. So I don't remember which ones we did. Shaila number 1 was counting Mashiach toward a minyan. So have in mind now, as I'm going through it again, which one you want to vote for, which one we're going to talk about. Shaila number 1, counting Mashiach toward a minyan. I mean, the guy who says he's Mashiach, right? Actual Mashiach counts, right? But counting the guy who thinks he's Mashiach toward a minyan. Shaila number 2, returning what you stole in high school. And shaila number 3 is davening for the Tay-Sachs baby. All those who want to talk about, now by show of hands, all those who want to talk about counting Mashiach toward a minyan? Okay. All those who want to talk about returning what you stole in high school? No judgment. All right. Okay, someone write down these names. Okay, and all those who want to talk about davening for the Tay-Sex, okay, it looks like that wins, yeah? Okay, so I guess that's what's going to... It's good, because this relates to recent Parshas HaShavua. It relates to Chanukah. It relates to a lot of things. We'll see how much of it we actually get to. So where this starts is a Mishnah Meseches Brachos. The Mishnah Meseches Brachos tells us as follows. Hatzoek l'sha'avar harezu tefillah shav. If a person cries out and davens for that which already happened, and you daven that Hashem should undo it. Someone just asked me in one of the other yeshivas, what if you don't daven that Hashem should undo it, but you daven that you should walk into a parallel universe where things are functioning on a different... I'm like, I didn't watch The Matrix. Like, I'm not sure, like, where exactly that... I don't know how that works exactly. I don't know. But, if you daven for that which already happened, it's too late, it already happened, harezu tefillah shav. So what does shav mean? Shav, shin, vav, aleph. Vain. So okay, so I'm a vain person. I mean, whatever. So what? So it's a tefillah shav. Why can't I do it just because it's tefillah shav? How do I know that you're not allowed to do it just because it's tefillah shav? So there are certain like protocols in tefillah. You're not allowed to just daven wherever you are. Like imagine you meet, I guess we can say King of England. There's actually a King of England again. Like my whole life, we would always imagine you meet the Queen of England. Now there's a King of England. But imagine you meet the King of England, right? If you go in and just go in for a high five, right, or a fist bump or whatever, they'll chuck you right out of there. That's a breach of protocol. You're not allowed to do that. They give you instructions in advance. I never met him, but I'm told they give you instructions in advance how you're supposed to do it. You know, in certain countries, you got to do like this and whatever. I don't know. There are different things that you're supposed to do. You can't just go into a king and do whatever you want. So there is a way to daven. There are protocols of what you're supposed to ask the Ribono Shalom about. And when the Mishnah says tefillah shav, or B'Kiveger quotes from the Sefer Chasidim, when the Mishnah says tefillah shav, it means aser. You're not allowed to daven for such things. I cannot daven that the Yankees should win the World Series in 1997. When Mariano Rivera gave up that hit to Sandy Alomar or whatever. I am not allowed to, I think, you can check it out if I recall. I'm not allowed to daven for something that already happened. That's an iser. And the Mishnah says, Ketzad. It says, okay, so give me an example. What's an example of tefillah shav? So the Mishnah says, Haisa ishto mu'uberes. A man's wife is pregnant. Va'omer, and he says, Yihi ratzon sheteleid ishti zacha. That I want my wife to give birth to a baby boy. Harezu tefillah shav. You're not allowed to daven for that. Why? The gender is already determined. It either is or isn't. How come the Mishnah doesn't say Yi ratzon sheteleid ishti nekeva? That I want my wife to give birth to a girl? What? You have an answer? I don't really have an answer to that question. What?
No man davens.
No man davens for that? This man did. I mean, our first 4 children were all boys. When my son Zachariah was born, our third son, so even though mine and Nathaniel and Zachariah are not named after the same person, we have a lot of the same names. Our Yisrael Yaakovs are named after the same person, but our Zacharias are not. When my son Zachariah was born, it was our 3rd son in a row. The doctor said, "See you in 2 years," right? Meaning, like she knew, like. And then when Daniel was born, our 4th son, "See you in 2 years." Then when Chani was born, our daughter was born. She's like, "Am I going to see you in 2 years?" Like, I'm not sure. The Maisa, she didn't, but the at that point it was like, okay, enough. Like it's time for a girl. Really, 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 you should daven for a healthy child, right? Meaning, obviously, when people will ask you. God willing, one day when you're in the parsha and your wife is, people will ask you, they'll say, what do you want? You want a boy or a girl? And your response should be, I just want a healthy child. I wouldn't mind a healthy child that I could throw a football with, but still, I throws it, like, not like she's pushing the football, but, okay, fine. So I just want a healthy child. 2 of my boys throw a football like they're pushing a football. Okay, but anyway, so I just want a healthy child. Fine, but the Mishnah gives an example. In certain cultures, it's understood that everyone always davens for a boy. My sister-in-law, my brother and sister-in-law live in Northern California. Any Northern Californians over here? San Francisco, Oakland, Palo Alto. Where? Your grandparents in Palo Alto. You know my brother? So my brother Rav Aryeh Lebowitz was Rosh Kollel in Palo Alto. So anyway, when they had like a whole bunch of company over once, and a bunch of Sephardi fellows were eating a meal by them, and one of the guys said after the meal, Rebbe Lebowitz, this meal was so delicious. My sister-in-law was pregnant at the time. It would have been rude if she wasn't. They said this meal was so delicious, the baby should be a boy. And she's like, what? Like, is that a thing? Like, you're supposed to, like, is that, I guess in certain cultures, that's a thing. She was not happy with that bracha. You know, like, tell me it should be a healthy baby. Anyway, so back to the Mishnah. So if a person davens that it should be a zachar, it is a wasted tefillah, it's asur to daven such a thing. Mishnah goes on, you're traveling, and you hear some screaming, some crying out in the city, and you don't know where that's coming from. There's someone in distress in the city. And the guy says, let it not be in my home. It either is in your home or it's not in your home. Too late to daven for that. It happened to me once. I was once driving home from a bar mitzvah, and I turned on the radio, WCBS 880 News. It was a long time ago, before they had, all these Torah apps and things like that you could listen to, or at least that's the story I'm going with. So I turned on the radio, and they announced. It was the only time I ever remember. I can't imagine. I still don't know why they did this, but they said on the radio as part of the news that there was a major house fire in North Woodmere. Anyone from the New York area knows that North Woodmere is like the Five Towns stepsister. It's like, it's like anyone from Teaneck here? So like, the other side of Teaneck? Right? That's what North Woodmere is, right? I mean, it's like, it's not quite West Hempstead, but, it's like, it's like the stepsister of the Five Towns. So they announced a house fire. Why this was newsworthy, I don't know. I knew that it was Hanukkah, and I knew immediately where, unfortunately, whenever you hear about a house fire on Hanukkah in a frum neighborhood, you probably know where the fire came from. So that's your reminder to be very, very, very careful about the neiros. I would even go so far as to say, this is why I send an email to my shul every year. This is my reminder to myself to send the email to my shul that you should stay in the room with your candles, not just in the house with your candles, not just to blow them out before you leave the house. Someone should be in the room with the candles, because we light candles by windows that have drapes, and we push them aside or whatever, but then they fall down, and then and aside from the danger, which you can't say aside from the danger, that's obviously the ikr, that's obviously the primary concern, the level of chilul Hashem that comes about because of a fire that results from a mitzvah, that is the ultimate chilul Hashem. So for all of those reasons, you got to be very careful. I actually, this reminder once saved a family. My next door neighbors had a child, came home from preschool with a menorah, a beautifully painted menorah, Chanukiah, not like Beis HaMikdash menorah, Chanukiah, a beautifully painted Chanukiah, and it was an art project in the school. And on Friday night, the family lit candles. And then Daddy went to shul, and Mommy and the little children were going to go to the basement where she was going to read them stories like she does every Friday night. And she said, you know what, the rabbi just sent an email that you shouldn't leave the candles unattended. So I'm not going to go to the basement. We're going to read our stories in the living room. And it turned out that the paint that the preschool used to paint the Chanukiah was very, very flammable. The entire thing went up in flames, and thank God they were there to handle the situation. So anyway, I was driving home and I heard about a house fire. So my first thought, a house fire in North Woodmere. Again, miracle. So the first thing I thought was, oh gosh, I really hope it's not my house. Second thing I thought was, oh gosh, I just violated the Mishnah Maseches Brachos, right? Because the Mishnah Maseches Brachos says it either is or isn't. It's too late. You're not allowed to have it. I happened to have not in my house. It was people who live around the corner from me. Their whole house was destroyed. Thank God, everyone was safe, and it was from Hanukkah candles, and they were home. They just weren't in the room, and the drapes fell, and it caught on fire, and the whole house was destroyed. Thank God, everyone was safe. So anyway, that's tefillah shav. You're not allowed to daven for such things. The Gemara in Bracha says, wait a second, there's one major figure in Jewish history that we read about in these recent parshios that did daven that the gender of the child should be something. Leah, exactly. The Gemara says that Leah knew when she was pregnant with her seventh child, my father always jokes, my sister in Ramat Eshkol, B'li Ayin Hara, has 12 children. My father says, you know what they call 7 children in Ramat Eshkol? A good start, an okay start. But Leah was pregnant with her 7th child, and she realized she already had 6 of the Shvatim. She realized each of the Shvachos already had 2 of the Shvatim. And if she has a 7th Shevet, then what does that mean? Rachel's going to have less than the Shvachos. So Leah davens that the baby should be a girl. And it was a boy, and the Gemara says, Nishapech, it turned into a girl because of Leah's tefillah, and so Dinah was born. And Rachel was able to have, Rachel at the same time was pregnant with Yosef. So Rachel had Yosef, and there was still room to have another, so she was able to have Binyamin, and that's how everything evened out. Simple reading of the Gemara is that the gender actually changed. That there was a baby boy in Leah that turned into a girl, and a baby girl in Rachel that turned into a boy. There are mefarshim that say that there are certain traces of the other gender that remained, in the sense that Dinah was a yatsanis. She was someone who was very assertive and more so than a girl would normally be, which is more masculine midah. Yosef had a certain more feminine midos. He's the only man described in the Torah, I think, as a yafei toar. Women are described all the time as being beautiful. Sarah and Rachel, they're always described as being beautiful. Esther, but Yosef is described, right? What does the Rashi say? Yosef was misalsel b'sa'aro, that he was curling his hair. David also. Shaul was Mishach Malmayla. Shaul is a descendant of of the Bnei Rachel. So Yosef misalsel b'sa'aro, which I don't know. Probably Jewish men don't really typically have so much hair, but he had this sense of beauty to him. But anyway, there's even one Mefarish that says, no, it can't be. How does a gender change in the uterus? It's impossible. More likely what happened was that Hashem, in the middle of the night, performed some sort of uterine transplant. Like they went to sleep at night, and it's unclear. If you look at the Marsha, it's unclear what he thinks exactly happened. Either that the babies just, crawled out in the middle of the night and went into the other one, or, which, like that's less of a miracle than the gender changing. Or that Hashem somehow just moved uteruses from one to the other, and the baby. Okay, it happens to be a very important maravakum in halacha, that marsha, because nowadays we have shilas of who the mother is if the egg comes from one woman and another woman carries the pregnancy. So does the contribution of the egg that started the pregnancy determine motherhood, or does the carrying of the pregnancy determine motherhood? So where are you going to find a maramakum on that? Where are you going to find? There's no source for that. So people reach. They reach. So that's the source that they come up with. That Leah, Dinah started in Rachel's womb, so it must have been Rachel's egg, but Leah carried the pregnancy. So it's so maybe that tells you that it's the gestational mother and not the genetic mother. We need better rayas than that for halacha, right? If we're going to determine halacha, agav, how do we pass on that? Anyone know? Anyone ever hear that shayla? It comes up all the time. You don't realize that it comes up all the time. So most often it's a gerus question, because one is Jewish and one's not, right? Either the genetic mother or the gestational mother is Jewish and the other one's not. So typically we do a kiur l'chumra. We'll do a gerus, we treat it as a suffix, and we do a gerus in such a case. But anyway, so back to our discussion. So the Gemara asks, how could Leah do that? You're not allowed to daven that the gender of the baby should change. It's a Mishnah, you're not allowed to daven for such things. The Gemara gives 2 answers. Answer number 1 says the Gemara is, you're not allowed to daven for such things. Leah Imenu is allowed to daven for such things. Because Leah Imenu is a tzaddikus of a different madrega. I think what the Gemara means is that there are some people, we're not allowed to daven for miracles. Changing the gender just like that, that's a miracle. We're not allowed to daven for miracles. It's halacha. You're not allowed to daven for a nace. But there's such a thing as people who are melumad benisim, that their entire lives are miraculous. There are people like that here in Eretz Yisrael. You can't explain how they live. You can't explain anything. Everything is a miracle. Everything in their lives is a miracle. I once asked my uncle, who lives here in Eretz Yisrael, like, how do you make it, like, financially? So he said, you make $100, you spend $150, and you save the rest. Malumah benisim. I don't know. We can't necessarily explain how things work with some people. Someone who's a tzaddikas like Leah, who's malumedas benisim, she's allowed to daven for an ace because that's her whole life. Her whole life is nisim. All the Emos, their whole life was nisim. They were all barren. Sarah didn't have a uterus. You can't have a baby if you don't have a uterus, and somehow she did. Nowadays they do uterine transplants, which is also amazing. That's a new thing they started doing. A woman could donate her uterus to another woman. I was just involved in such a shaila. If you get the call on Shabbos that the uterus is ready for you, are you allowed to? You're allowed to go into the hospital. You're not a chola. You're not. You just want to be able to have bababies. So you're allowed. Fascinating shailas. Maybe for next time I come. Very interesting stuff. But where was it? Yeah. So Leah is mulumedas b'nis. That's one answer. If you're a tzaddikas like Leah, you could daven such things. Gemara's other answer is, it was before the gender was determined. When's gender determined? So the Gemara assumes 40 days into pregnancy. What does science assume? Like, what does the reality assume?
4. Right.
Conception. At conception, it's already determined. The Gemara actually also assumes it's at conception, but the Gemara assumes that there's some rare cases, what they call mazriya b'basachas, there are some rare cases where the determination can wait up to 40 days. Even though typically it's determined, the Gemara assumes at conception, but since there's a possibility that it will wait 40 days until gender is determined, you're still allowed to daven within the 40 days. That's what the Gemara says. Leah was less than 40 days pregnant at the time that she davened, and she was therefore allowed to daven. Good, now we know the Gemara. So now paskin for this couple. They want to know, are they allowed to daven that the baby doesn't have tay-sex? So what are the two heterim we just learned? You're allowed to daven for such things if you are a tzaddikas like Leah Imenu. So obviously I sat the woman down and I started, testing her and being mean and see how she reacts. No, you can't do that. Right? So what's the answer? So meaning obviously she's not a tzaddikas like Leah Imenu. She's a wonderful woman. She's a wonderful person, and the husband, is a wonderful person. I would call them tzaddikim, but I'm not a fool. No one is tzaddikas like Leah Imenu. So obviously they don't meet that criteria. Was it within 40 days of pregnancy? Certainly not. Certainly not. It was after 40 days of pregnancy. And even if it was within 40 days of pregnancy, over here it's not about gender. This couple's not asking about gender. What are they asking about? Tay-sex. That's for sure a conception. That doesn't wait 40 days. So can they daven? The answer to l'chora is no. However, here's the twist. There's another Gemara. There's always another Gemara. There's another Gemara. Gemara Meseches Bava Metzia. And the Gemara tells us if you are a farmer and you harvest your field and you fill up your silo with grain and you haven't yet counted or measured how much grain is in your silo, you're allowed to daven that it should be a lot. What do you mean daven that it should be a lot? It either is a lot or it's not a lot. You're allowed to daven that it should be a lot. Once you count it, once you measure it, once you know exactly what's there, then you're not allowed to daven that it should be a lot. Because then you already know what it is. Eina bracha shruya ela al davra amanu al davra amanu ela b'davra sami min ha'ayin. That to daven for bracha, that only works if you don't yet know. The implication is, even if it already is, you just don't know what it is, that you're allowed to daven for that. Oh, wait a second, so now we have a problem. Now we have two Gemaras that are against each other. You have one Gemara that says that if a woman is pregnant, do they know if it's a boy or a girl? No. But you're not allowed to daven for that, even though you don't know, because it already is. Even though you don't know, you're not allowed to daven. Then you have another Gemara that says, your silo is full of grain. Do you know how big it is? No, but it's already determined. It already is or isn't. And what does the Gemara say? You're allowed to daven for it. Now what's the answer to their shiloh? It depends. Is the Tesak situation like the grain with the silo? Or in which case they would be allowed to daven? Or is the Tesak situation like the gender of the baby? In which case they would not be allowed to daven. I don't know. What's the difference between the two Gemaras? How do you answer these Gemaras? When I came across this question, when I thought of this question, I said, this sounds like a good question, no? Anyone with me on this? This is a good question. I need a pat on the back here. I thought, this is a good question. I thought the Gemara must ask this question. I mean, sometimes the question is good enough that, like, some Rishon must ask it. The Gemara must ask it. It doesn't. It doesn't. I thought, okay, so at least a Rishon's going to ask. Not a single Rishon that I know of asked this question. Maybe an Achron. I think the earliest Achron that asked the question was like Rav Chaim Kanievsky. It somehow went hundreds and hundreds of years. No one asked this question. And I have no idea why. Adayom, I have no idea why no one asks this question. I was once talking to a big Talmid Chacham and I asked him this question. He said, I don't know what the answer is. But one thing I can tell you is that up in Shemayim, they're laughing at us. I said, what do you mean? He said, we're not farmers. We don't know what the story is with the silo and the grain. We're probably missing something about farming. They're looking down up in Shemayim, they're like, silly city boys. You don't know anything. Okay, but that didn't help answer the question. I still don't know exactly what the answer is. So what do you do when you're not sure? You got to ask your Rebbe, right? Everyone's got to have a Rebbe. It's very important to have a Rebbe. And it's very important to have Rebbeim who are honest with you and can tell you when they can help and when they can't help, when they know the answer, when they don't know the answer. So I asked some Gedolei HaPoskim, I asked some great Rebbeim what the answer is. So some of them suggested, there's a great Rav Karlibach who wrote a sefer called Chavtzelas Hashara, Karlibach. So he suggested, and Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein as well. You familiar with Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein? You ever see those What If books? Revna? Those crazy shaylas, like, there's no way this stuff actually happened. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But I've asked him a number of those shaylas. They happen. He just makes them more exciting than they, he has a flair for the dramatic, let's say. So I asked him the shayla, and he said, I wasn't satisfied with the answer. He said, there's a big difference between taking something and making it more or bigger versus changing something entirely. To change a boy to a girl, that's absolutely a miracle. You can't daven for that. But you have grain to make it bigger, to make it swell, to make it more, that you're allowed to daven for. If that's the answer. So what's the story with Tesach? I would think absolutely not. You can't daven. Then Rav Zilberstein writes to me, and therefore Tesach is like the grain. What? How is it like the grain? He said, because just like when it comes to grain, sometimes it swells and the market conditions change and this and that and it dries just the right way. Whenever it comes to health, whenever it comes to human health, we don't, doctors know what they know, but doctors know that we don't know everything yet. Miracles happen every day in hospitals. Why do miracles happen? Because we don't really we're way ahead of where we were a decade ago, 2 decades ago, but we don't really understand so much. There's so much we don't understand. Anything health related is not called davening for a miracle. You're allowed to daven for it. I asked Mori Rabbi Agon Rav Shechter Shlit'a, our Gadol Adar in America, who, by the way, in our base medrash, he sits there 7 days a week, all day long. Like the guy, when I was in yeshiva, guys didn't necessarily appreciate that. Now, this generation of guys appreciates it. Like in yeshiva, they realize that the Gadol Adar is sitting in our base medrash all day long, and anyone can go over to him and ask him anything, and when you ask him a question, you are the only thing in the world to him. Sits there listening, focused on your question as if it's like the most important thing in the world. And then you get a little scared. You're like, wait, is this really worth your time? But don't be scared. Anyway, so I asked Rav Shechter. Rav Shechter told me that he thinks, and this is a very important yesod. He said the answer is never not to daven. The answer is never not to daven. The question is what the content of the tefillah should be, what the tone of the tefillah should be. The answer is always tefillah. You always reach out to Hashem. You always daven. He didn't say it as emphatically. I'm saying it, but this is what he meant. You always daven. He said, "Can you daven that the baby doesn't have Tesach?" He said, "No," because that's determined. Right? Where you could daven is 2 things. First of all, you daven that you should have healthy children. But gadol, in general, that you should be zocha to healthy children. That for sure. Second of all, you daven, and I'll say it in Hebrew first and I'll paraphrase, that gam ki elech begeitz al naves, lo ira ra ki ata yimadi. That no matter what challenges life puts in your way, that you should have the strength, the dignity, the amunah, the bitachon, to withstand it, to handle it with grace, and to be able to have the strength to get through all of the challenges of life. Nobody goes through life without challenges. Those challenges are what build us, they're what makes us. We're about to start the Yom Tov of Chanukah, and we're going to say Al Nisim. Right? Moshe Benovitz once told me a vart that we daven not only for the Nisim and the Neflos, we daven Al HaMilchamos. We thank Hashem for Milchama. No one wants Milchama. Milchama is horrific. But if you have to go through a Milchama in your life, afterwards you thank Hashem for having to go through that Milchama. So you daven that no matter what Hashem puts in my path, I should be able to handle everything that puts in my path, and that's what tefillah is. Tefillah is connecting to the Ribbono Shalom and knowing that the Ribbono Shalom is with you. It's not Amazon Prime, where if it doesn't come in 2 days, I'm angry. What's the matter with this? Where's the service? And then you complain. How come it didn't come? And then you get 2 of them. Right? Whenever that happens, you get 2 of them. So that's not the way tefillah works. Tefillah is connecting to the Ribbono Shalom and knowing that the Ribbono Shalom is with you, no matter what you go through in life. And Be'ez Hashem, we should all be zocha to have all of our tefillos answered and to daven with the right kavanos. And just because everyone always asks at the end, what happened? The baby was healthy, thank God. They had 3 more healthy children, thank God. They did it a little more carefully, a story for a different time, but they had to conceive in a way that they could guarantee that it wouldn't be a Tay-Sex baby, and they did. And Baruch Hashem, the family, Bli Ayin Hara, is living happily ever after. Everyone, Afreilach and Chanukah, it's been so wonderful to spend some time with you today. Continued Hatzlach in all of your learning.